Welcome to Art's Place, conservative talk from a different view, from the Casablanca studio in Golden, Colorado. Hosted by Art Carlson. At 4'6", liberals fear him, and conservatives love him. He's definitely a giant among men. Now here's your host, Art Carlson.
Welcome to a special edition of Art's Place 9/11 commemoration. We will begin the show with a minute of silence. Okay, thank you for joining us. We've got a special show today on this solemn day. I hate to say anniversary, but 20 years ago we had a catastrophic event happening in the United States. And I'm going to start off the show by talking about where I was and what happened to me on that day. It was a typical September day. I was at work and just working away at Rocky Mountain Orthodontics. And, beautiful sunny day. Just working away in the morning, and someone said, turn on the radio. A plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. And I thought, what, a small plane? Or, I was thinking about the accident during World War II where a B-25 crashed into the Empire State Building. I thought, well, maybe it was a small plane. And so I turned on the radio, and about half hour later, I heard another plane. It was a jet that ran into the other tower. And so I was giving kind of a play-by-play of what happened. And I said, hey, another plane has crashed into the tower. And the room was silent for the rest of the day. My coworker, Carol, who was sitting in the station across from me, was sobbing and crying. So that was my vivid remembrance of that day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up Lloyd and then Mike, and they're going to discuss where they were and what happened on that day. And then once we get finished, we'll talk about the history that led up to that fateful day. So let's get started with Lloyd Mendenhall.
Hello, Art. How you doing?
I'm doing well, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to. I want to tell how I became aware of it, but let me preference it with a little bit of previous history related to Oklahoma. I mentioned this on Greg's show last night. we had the Murrah Federal Building in April 19th, 1995. And that's when Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols killed 300 people, including children, in the Murrah Federal Building. Hello, Chris. And so when I found out about the way I found out about that is my daughter-in-law at the time, she's now my ex-daughter-in-law, she called me from Kansas and she says, "Hey, Oklahoma City, there was a bombing in Oklahoma City." I go, "What?" And she says, "Yeah." She says, "Do you think it's terrorist?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I honestly thought it was." They said, "Well, they don't know what it is yet." Of course, I assumed it was Middle Eastern terrorists, not uh, uh, American terrorist. But so come 9/11, I had just gotten up and was just sitting down to have my first cup of coffee. And she called again and she says, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, "What?" She says, "A plane just crashed into the World Trade Center in New York." I said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, it's on fire. It's pretty bad." Okay. So I reached over and I flipped on the TV. At that time, I still had, I don't know, satellite or cable. I'm not sure which. I think satellite at the time. And I flipped it on to watch it. And I was sitting there watching it live on Fox News when the second plane crashed into the second tower. And she called up. She says, "And did you see that?" I said, "Yeah, I did." She says, "Oh my God, what's going on?" I said, "Well," I said, "I can pretty well assure you this is a terrorist attack." I was like you at first. I thought that it was a small plane, and then, but she had called me and she says, "We're under attack." And I said, "What?" That was her first words. "We're under attack." I said, "We are." And that's when I turned on, and you know, the speculation had already started on some of the news channels. Could this be a terrorist attack? It looks like. And then I heard, within that same time period, I heard about the Pentagon. And the rumors flew and they said, well, there's 12 planes still missing, there's hijacked. And just, I listened to somebody who flies flight simulator like I've done for years, has reenacted I think it was the North Tower, reenacted that first part. And what they've done is they've added actual audio tapes from the aircraft and from the towers, or aircraft in the control tower. So you're hearing air traffic, air traffic control, and you're hearing this talk back and forth, and you hear these Arab guys coming on saying, "Well, if you just do what we say and nobody will get hurt," and this is in the recordings. And I watched it the other night because that was so bone chilling, to listen to it from that point of view, and to see the really well done graphics. Of course, it's Microsoft, so it is. I don't think it's the FS20. I think it's like 2000, the FSX version, but Flight Simulator 10. But yeah, I remember my daughter-in-law calling up and saying, "We're under attack." And no, let me look at this, because she knew that I had friends that I was still in touch with that was in the military and the government. Of course, I got a couple of phone calls right after that and said, "Yeah, we're pretty sure this is terrorist." So, and that was 20 years ago. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years. And
Yes.
I'm like you, I don't want to consider it an anniversary. An anniversary is something you celebrate. This is
Yeah.
something we mourn. You know.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's how I found out, and that's what I was doing. I sat there in front of the TV the whole day. Judy got
That's what I
I got
did when I got home. I was watching, and I saw that animation that you saw, the simulator with the
yeah,
the
yeah,
recording, and it was
yeah.
bone
It's
chilling.
it is.
Then by the time I got home, everything had already happened. The crash at
Yeah,
the Pentagon
crash.
and the plane that crashed at Shanksville. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We had Judy, when the phone rang, because everybody knows you don't call me before noon unless it's an emergency. So when my daughter-in-law had called, uh, the I don't know why my light is so terrible right now, but it's showing a yellow cast. I look like I'm jaundiced or something. So I don't know. Anyways, uh, but yeah, she woke up and then her and I sat out there in our den at the time. It was what we had as a den. We sat there and watched it the whole time. It's just like, I can remember probably 6 major events that happened. I remember, uh, uh, I remember when John F. Kennedy was killed.
Right.
I
I was a
remember,
little young. I was 3 at the time.
yeah, well, I remember when he was killed. Uh, one of the kids come in from school. He'd gone home for lunch. He come in and he was crying. I said, "What are you crying about?" His name was Robert Okagawa. To this day, I'll never forget his name. Uh, but he says, I said, "Robert, what are you crying for?" He says, "The president's been shot." I said, "No, he hasn't." And just as soon as those words came out of my mouth, the announcement came that he had passed away.
Wow.
So I remember that. I remember Robert Kennedy. I remember
Yep.
Martin
I
Luther King.
remember that one.
I remember the Challenger.
Yep. Challenge.
And what was the other one? The Challenger.
Oh, Waco, then
Well,
Oklahoma City. Oh, and how
yeah,
about the first bombing at the Trade Center?
yeah. I remember that one, and that was
We'll
what was
talk
funny.
about that a little bit
Right? Yeah.
later. So
Let's
let's
bring in
bring
the
on
other
Mike, and he could give us his
because he
recollection.
lived in that
That's
part
the
of the
word
country.
that I wanted to say. Recollection.
Recollection.
All right, let's welcome Mike Roach,
Hi guys.
aka CNY.
I changed my name back, Art.
Oh, you did?
I was hemorrhaging subs, so
Oh,
I'm just going to own it now. It's my name. I'm back.
okay. There you
Yeah,
go.
it
Well,
works.
Mike, tell us where you were and how you found out about this
Well,
event.
like all of us, I mean, just an ordinary day. I'm a little later riser than you guys. I was getting up, and my neighbor called, said a plane hit the World Trade Center. Like you guys, first thing was Cessna,
Yeah.
something like that, and an accident. And then I turned the news on. I actually turned NBC on. 'Cause, 20 years ago, Fox was really a startup, and NBC still had a little bit of credibility. Um, you know, and then saw the second plane hit and kind of did double take like that. Did I just see what I just thought I saw? And and by then the speculation already started, so it was pretty sure by the gash in the side of the building that it was not a small plane, because those buildings are gigantic. And then of course, like everyone else, was glued to the TV all day and watched the whole thing unfold, and from the smoldering to and then the buildings imploding and falling down, and people just running for their lives and all that, and like we all experience it that way, I think. Just shock and disbelief and at what we were seeing, and it was like I can only imagine how the people who were actually there uh, to this day must feel. I mean, I saw it on TV, and it's 250 miles away here to New York City. So um, by the time the planes got grounded, by the middle of the afternoon that day, if you remember, everything was grounded. We had at that time an air base here, the 174th Fighter Wing, and they actually flew down to New York so we could hear them taking off and heading down there and stuff. And knew then that once everything was on the ground, nothing more was going to happen. But watched it like you guys, and just said when they went down, the horror of, my God, everybody in there is just dead.
Yeah.
And I was pretty much up all night watching television. I was, in a strange way, it was mesmerizing. Hoping against hope for recovery. How do you stop
Right.
watching it?
Mm-hmm.
And then, got together with my neighbors, and like everyone else, started to contemplate what was next, and that was that. And here we are, 20 years later,
Mm-hmm.
on commemorating it. That's the way I look at it. I like you
Mm-hmm.
guys. I hate
Commemorate,
the
yeah.
word anniversary for that, but and how much the world has changed in 20 years, huh?
Right.
In so many ways. We'll get into that, I'm sure. So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, what I want to do is I want to talk about some events that led up to this fateful day. We had the Murrah building bombing, and then in 1993, I'm gonna the World Trade Center bombing was a terrorist attack. That was February 26, 1993, with a truck bomb with 1,300 pounds of urea nitrate hydrogen gas enhanced device that was intended to send the North Tower crashing into the South Tower. And who could forget the mastermind, the blind sheikh, who
Yeah.
I believe is still in Guantanamo? Or is he at Supermax? I think he's at Supermax here in Colorado.
Yeah, I think he is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah. The first one there, remember seeing some of the damage down in the garage area of the building. There was several layers of garage down there and stuff.
Right.
And it was a hell of a blast. But and I can remember hearing some of the firemen quoted, the size of the steel beams, saying they'll
Mm-hmm.
never take this thing down. It's so gigantically built. But unfortunately, you know, um, uh, for better or worse, you have to give um, Al Qaeda credit for the imagination. It was, they accomplished what they wanted to accomplish, and
Mm-hmm.
with our own planes, it didn't take much at all. And you look back 20 years and think flying back then was, you got
Mm-hmm.
on the plane, you went through the metal detector really quickly, and
Mm-hmm.
you went on your merry way. No worry about shoes and liquids and whatever. So
Yeah.
Right.
getting in
Mm-hmm.
box cutters and stuff like that on a plane was not that hard to do at all,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
really not that hard to pull off.
Yep. Oh, and don't forget the Cole,
Right?
the
Yes, that's cool.
USS Cole, and the Kobar Towers bombing too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
If you remember,
it's-
hijackings pre 9/11, 2001 were mostly ended up, say, going to Cuba, things like that. The idea that they were going to use them as missiles. Um,
yeah,
we should have thought of that,
right.
but apparently not.
It never
Well,
occurred to anybody that they would use them as missiles, and
yeah.
so uh, yesterday I listened to a local conservative talk show host, Ross Kaminsky, and he had Mike Murrow, who was the assistant director of the CIA. He was with George Bush on that day. And Bush, he wanted to go back to the White House, and he said, no, we're not going to do that because we don't know what is going on. So they went to several bases. They ended up here at Offutt Air Force Base here in Nebraska before I think they made their way to Andrews later on. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah, and I
think,
think Bush insisted on being back at the White House, if I remember correctly,
yeah.
Yeah.
by that night.
Well,
And,
yeah, and he said, "Get this plane on the ground." That was, he
Hmm.
wanted to speak to the people of the United States as soon as he could, and they were flying around. Oh, we can't do that. We don't know what. He says, "Get this plane on the ground." It's just that
mm,
simple.
Right.
And predating, we're talking about things that led up to this, like the Blind Sheik, and I remember when they were doing the trials on that, and I was probably watching on court TV or something at the time before
Right.
it became whatever in God's name it is now. But and Judy sitting there, she says, "Do you think that'd ever happen here?" I said, "What the hell would they ever do in Oklahoma? There's nothing here worth blowing up." And it was few years later and Timothy McVeigh came in. So she
Hmm.
just looks at me and says, "I thought you said it never happened." I said, "Okay, I'm
Yeah.
wrong." So when
Hmm.
9/11 happened and she got up when I did, or shortly after, because the phone had rang and she knew it was something important. So we were watching it and she says, "Is this a terrorist attack?" I said, "I have no doubt that it is."
Hmm.
And, you hear all the conspiracy theorists, it was blown up by the CIA to get us in the war, blah,
Right.
blah, 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 whatever. But, I've often wondered how much structural damage was done under the first, you know, because that was the foundation they blew up the first ones at. Even though they went in and they repaired everything, how much structural damage might have weakened that steel and caused it? Because I don't think Al Qaeda had any plans. I mean, it was in their own. Only in their greatest dreams did they ever think they'd take down both towers. I mean, in
right.
all honesty, I don't think they really thought that would happen.
Hmm.
And, like you guys, I sat there and watched it, and, it was addictive, and I got to a point where I just had to stop watching it. But, I think there was a lot of warnings coming up, like you said, the coal happened just not too long. How long ago? When was the USS
I
Cole
think it
hit? I
was
can't remember.
prior to. Was it
Yeah, it
prior
was.
or after the bombing?
I think
The tower.
I'll look it up in a minute. But
Yeah.
yeah, we had a lot of, and unfortunately, our agencies weren't talking to each other because, and in the CIA, their job is to take care of. They're like
It
MI6.
was
They take
prior.
care of. Yeah, it was
October
prior. That's what I
12th,
thought.
2000.
2000. That's what I thought. It was just before. You know, a, about a year before. And
Hmm.
that's what I was thinking. But so we saw this coming. But our
Hmm.
agencies didn't talk to each other. And
Yep.
I've often wondered, could that first attack that happened by the Blind Sheik, could that have, weakened the structures? You
Um,
think something that
Possibly.
tall and getting hit at the base, there's no way they can guarantee that. So that's why I take some of those conspiracy theories and throw them out the window, because
Yeah.
to
Hmm.
me, that's a logical
Right.
Yeah.
explanation, because it was hit, and as you said, that was a massive explosion that hit that
Hmm.
first time with the Blind Sheik. So
Oh, and
it had,
prior to Bush being president, didn't we send a couple cruise missiles to blow up an aspirin factory?
yeah,
We could
yeah,
have killed Bin Laden prior to this event,
oh yeah,
and we just had another feckless uh, president who just didn't really want to get his hands dirty and say, "Oh, go ahead and send a couple missiles, and maybe we'll
well,
hopefully get somebody."
Oliver North warned of this guy clear back in the. He warned the people about Osama bin Laden and the senators that were overseeing the hearings at the time, and I think it was the Iran Contra
Hmm.
situation, and they just laughed at him. Whom, now everybody knows who Osama bin Laden is, but at that
Yep.
time they were making fun of the name, and they were making fun of Colonel North. He tried to
Hmm.
warn them,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah.
So,
That's true.
and
I remember watching the as a about a while after the buildings were both hit, and the fire just kept going and going and going,
Hmm.
and where the gashes not only hit one side but they went through in
Yep.
one way or
yep,
another on the building, and the structure the way the World Trade Center was made was like the outside of the building was the structural strength. The
Yeah.
beams that made the style of it were also structural, and so many of those were broken through, and then the jet fuel and desks and rugs and everything else just burning and burning, and especially the building that was hitting the lowest. I don't know if it was the North Tower or the South Tower, where
Yeah.
more weight was on top of it. And I'm thinking, anybody I think could look at it and say, if that fire just keeps going, that steel's going to lose its integrity
Yeah.
and go down. And I imagined it, the top part toppling off, but as soon as it started to pancake, I think it was, just a chain reaction that,
Yeah.
and then, those firemen, unfortunately, who went in there just didn't have a chance of putting that out. I mean,
Right.
that's beyond anything they could possibly train for. They went in, God bless them, but they did what they're trained to do, but and but they didn't get out. And just saw the reading of the names this morning. At least when the Fox guy would stop interrupting and talking himself all day, but it's just, it still matters as much to me. It's like, it's kind of like we're talking about where were we on 9/11 and all that. It's kind of like my concern more today is where are we now, as a nation. And we have a whole generation that was brought up either being too young or not even born, which is fine. That happens with every event. I wasn't
Oh,
born
yeah.
during Pearl Harbor, but I had it instilled in me by my parents and all that, and by what was
Same here.
taught, the knowledge of what happened by the Japanese attacking. And I never felt in my life any need to apologize for the atomic bombs and all that kind of thing. But we have a generation now that doesn't feel anything about 9/11 and or as really antipathy towards America. It's just look at last year. So I don't know. We've lost that slogan, never forget. I think America in many ways has forgotten, sadly.
Yeah.
Obviously
Yeah.
not all, but many.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here watching the replay on YouTube of them reading the names and these kids and grandkids of people that were there, great nieces and nephews. And, they, some of them, you know, uh, obviously they're doing their part and their parents, but, you know, that's a small minority. It reminds me because, we all know Greg from Oz by Drone. In Australia, one of the things that always impressed me was their celebration of Anzac Day, which was actually of the uh, commemorating the defeat by of the Australians by Johnny Turk, as they called him, by the Turks at Gallipoli. The massacre of Gallipoli. And the problem is he said that this last year, of course, we had COVID, and of course they had harsh lockdowns too. But and I've heard this from several people over in Australia because I got a lot of friends over there that they're starting to not. This new generation is it's just another holiday. It's just another day off. It's just another reason not to go to work. They have no clue what Anzac is all about, and I think this is what's happening with 9/11. It's just, oh yeah, they get up and do you guys remember last year's 9/11 commemorative? Do you remember 5 years ago commemorative? No, because they didn't make a big thing of it. The only reason it's a big thing right now is because this is the 20th year of
Right.
commemorating this. It's been 20 years since it's happened. That's the only reason we're seeing this. But in the past few years, this country has just forgotten it, you
Mhm.
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
And they use that Twin Towers never forget stuff for, hey, this is the 9/11 sale, come on in, and blah blah blah. It's just we don't teach history, so we don't remember history.
That's right, Steve. Yep.
Right. From what I've heard, a lot of the teachers are refusing to use they're using all these euphemisms nowadays instead of, it's the tragic events of 9/11 instead of terrorist attack, and not being careful not to say Islamist extremist or anything like that because of Islamophobia and all this
Right.
stuff. And it's like, if you don't say what it is and use too many euphemisms to whitewash it and water it down, it loses its impact. I mean,
Right.
and some of that's natural because of the kids' age and stuff. But even adults right now, unfortunately, it seems to have dulled in their senses.
Mm-hmm.
And it's certainly dulled in our so-called president's senses,
Yep.
And
Does he have any sense?
nah, everything's dulled in his senses. But,
Also, remember way back in the day, most of the terrorism was over there in the Middle East. We had the PLO. I think PLO was like the first one I remember, and then after
Middle Eastern,
what happened
Middle
in
Eastern terrorist.
yeah, now after 9/11, it spread all over the world. I mean, you've got Boko Haram in Africa. And then there is another one in East Africa, and I can't remember the name. Then you have ISIS, Al Qaeda. Then you have Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines.
Yeah, I
So,
was thinking of the Philippines. Yeah,
mhm.
yeah.
So I'm really worried about my friends that live in the Philippines that after this day, I mean, after our surrender at Afghanistan, is that going to embolden Abu Sayyaf? Is it going to cause a resurgence of terrorist activity there? And don't forget about the attack in Bali.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And
yeah.
I think without out a doubt, I mean, what's in the timing couldn't be worse for our retreat out of Afghanistan,
Mm-hmm.
and the way it happened, and basically recognizing in essence that the Taliban and legitimizing them, they must think we are just ripe for the picking, and that's
Mm-hmm.
going to be the greatest recruiting tool for them. Say, look how weak and feckless America is right now. I mean, thank God for our guys in the military who serve voluntarily, and women who serve voluntarily. And we lost 13 unnecessarily a couple weeks ago, but the upper brass there in the Pentagon, apparently they've lost their way. I don't know what they're teaching at West Point these days, but
well,
those guys don't seem to have a clue.
yeah, they're teaching wokeness,
Mm-hmm.
and like there was some sort of kerfluffle or stir up here. I don't know, 6 7 months ago, last year, whenever, uh, at I think it was at the Air Force Academy, in which it was some racial comments were made or supposedly or alleged or
Yeah.
whatever, and the head of the academy comes in, or whoever comes in there, and gives this long drawn out speech about treating each, and it was a wokeness speech. It's like
Yep.
uh, let's all let's all hold hands, sing kumbaya, and dance naked around the fire pit or something. I don't know what the
Mm-hmm.
hell those people teach because it's stupid, but that's my opinion. And
Mm-hmm.
we live in a country where we're allowed to have an opinion. Well, we did live in a country where we're allowed to have an opinion. And one of the things about 9/11 is, and I talked about this last night on Greg's show, is on September 10th, It was just another nice fall day. It
Yeah.
wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. It was just a beautiful day here in Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of places were like that. And we were innocent, like you said. You had the PLO and now the blind sheik, but he came to New York City. That didn't affect me here in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and it didn't work. He tried. It just goes to show
Mm-hmm.
you how terrible they are at their job. Oh yeah, but we had those hotels blown up. We had the hotels in back in Lebanon. The the explosion there. Little things started building and started. We
Mm-hmm.
became a little. Because in the 70s is when you started getting the hijackers. And
Mm-hmm.
they were usually going to Algeria or Cuba or some other place. They just wanted out of the country they were in or out of the United States and get back to their, the fatherland, the motherland, or wherever the hell they
Well,
thought they
they
needed to
wanted
be.
money,
They wanted
know.
money so they could live there in prosperity.
Right.
Because American dollars over there. And you brought up the thing about what we did in Afghanistan. Hey, they now have piles of American cash, and now one of the planes was just released. So many people were there yesterday, and it was because we gave them some money. We paid
Right.
them to let this plane go, and they're being funded by our government to
Yep.
spread terrorism around the world. They've got more Black Hawk helicopters than Australia does. And
Mm-hmm.
and then actually, I think I heard the other night they have more Black Hawk helicopters than any other country besides us.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And this is a hotbed of terrorism. And we've got today, or well, it's probably yesterday because of their time zone difference. On 9/11 is when they swore in their new cabinet and their new government, and of course China and Russia was right there in
Mm-hmm.
attendance,
Oh,
giving them
and
the old high five.
there are two cabinet members. Guess what? They
That
were
are
the two
terrorists.
generals we traded for Bo Bergdahl.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Like,
Yep.
and
Yep.
Unbelievable.
it's,
And that was under Obama.
Right.
So
yes.
we could thank Obama and Biden for all this. So,
But
anyway, does anybody know what the significance of the day they chose to crash those planes into those buildings? What's the significance of September 11th?
I
I
did
don't
know it,
know.
but I can't remember it now.
It
Uh,
was the Battle of Vienna, where the Christians turned back the Ottomans at the
that's
gates of
right.
Vienna on
Yeah.
September 11th, 1683, because
Yeah.
Islam was on the move in Europe. They were in Spain, and they were coming up the Slavic countries and going
Right.
through what was then the Habsburg Empire, and they
Right.
were about to spill into Hungary and Romania. Well, they were already in Romania and Yugoslavia. That's why there are a lot. That's what the whole uh, ethnic cleansing deal was
Was
all
over.
about during
Yeah.
the Clinton administration. And here we are, we're protecting the Muslims from the ethnic cleansing. And what do we get for it? We got more terrorism out of it. So, and that's what happened. So they turned back the Ottomans from they. Otherwise, they would have marched in and maybe conquered all of Europe. They were kicked out of Spain in 1492.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Right.
yep,
And
Right. They had a huge caliphate, all
yep,
basically around the whole Mediterranean at the
yep,
time, I believe.
yep.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, it's just and the crazy part is they didn't take us down on 9/11. America bounced back, and we mourn the people we lost. But unfortunately, we're taking ourselves down right now,
Yeah.
as a nation. And the wokeness, for lack of a better word, it's just all goes under the umbrella of wokeness. Um, like, look at last year. It's just this suicidal, self-hatred of, I don't get it. I don't know where it comes from, this, other than the universities,
Yeah.
left-wing universities being instilled in college kids, and disenchanted people, or whatever, this self-hating Americans who just want to bring down the system, and having no clue where that leads to. Just bring down the man, like they're going to have, and that's been done before. Every other communist type revolution, and it always ends up bad for everybody.
Yeah. And well, going back to like releasing Bo Bergdahl and all that stuff for those terrorists, it didn't do us any good. It just hurt us. But I think of a quote that I read that's attributed to the great prophet Muhammad. As that way, I'm not offending anybody by using his name. But anyways, he had surrounded, and he had a city that was walled up. It was, he had them surrounded, and he had them, he was in siege mode. He held them under siege, and they weren't able to get into the village, but they were starving them out, or into the city that had, guard walls and all of that stuff. And this was when he was on his move. And so a message was sent out to him that they wanted to speak with him, and he their envoy came out, and they spoke, and they said, "Listen, we're starving. We'll open the gates to you as long as you promise not to kill us. We'll pay you a tribute. We'll give you the money, and we'll pay you a tribute." And he says, "Absolutely." So he said, "We'll do it tomorrow morning." And so the next morning, they opened their gates, and Muhammad and his army went in there and massacred everybody. And one of his generals says, "But you gave your word. Isn't that against the teachings?" And he says, "No, because they were infidels. They are not part of this. So a word given to an infidel holds no value."
Right. Yeah. The only thing they respect in that whole region is power and might.
Yeah.
And during the Bush years, we did that, and went into Afghanistan, and then stupidly went into Iraq, even though it was evil, but we went in. And then under Obama, just went on the apology tour, and all that stuff. And now this guy we got now is this puppet on a string who literally doesn't know what's going on. They have no sense of respect for. I actually worry now more than any day since the first 2 years, say, after the original 9/11, that something in the next couple years is going to go down big again.
Yeah.
They're definitely
Yeah,
going to be
I-
inspired.
Yeah. We lost our innocence after September 10th,
Yeah.
but we're no longer we were living in, we were very naivete when it came to terrorism, but then we had 9/11, and we became aware. But unfortunately, we have become complacent. We stopped teaching about it and what led to it. We suddenly decided that, well, we need to, as I said, sit around, sing kumbaya, and hold hands together now, because that will make them feel better about themselves. And I hate to say it, but it's going to take another 9/11. But I'm not sure at this point that our country could handle another 9/11. I think it would probably destroy us, and it might defeat us. I mean, I hope that if it happens, it's after I'm long gone. But I think it's going to take something like that, and it's also going to take people having to, you know, realize that you can't, you can't legislate morality. You can't, you can't guide a group of people that are bent on destroying us because we, you know, support I honestly expect to see Israel under attack here in the near future. And I think this is going to be, I think what this is going to lead to, because we've allowed this, uh, to grow, and we surrendered to them. We gave everything up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a much stronger Al Qaeda slash ISIS slash Taliban.
Mm.
They're going to formulate a group, and they're going to be the next world. They're going to make the PLO and Yasser Arafat seem like a bunch of schoolgirls.
Yeah. And
Right.
where we made the mistake was nation building, trying to democratize these countries that had no history of democracy and have no interest in democracy and freedom and liberty. I mean, it's not South Korea, it's not Japan, it's not Germany. What we should have done is we should have gone in there, uh, got the people that need to be, killed, and then what we should have done is we should have kept a presence at Bagram. We should have kept a
Oh
presence
yeah,
and said, all right, this will be our Guantanamo here in Afghanistan. That way we have assets in that part of the world to, keep an eye on what's going on over there, other than, satellites and maybe a network of agents over there.
Right.
So that's where we messed up, and
oh yeah,
hopefully whoever comes along, hopefully we'll get a real grown up after this idiot's gone, and said, all right, we're not going to do that crap anymore because it just plain doesn't work there. We tried to do that in South Vietnam, didn't work there
right,
because
right.
South Vietnam was a very much like Afghanistan, tribal, and even though they were a French colony for a couple of centuries, that liberty and freedom didn't mean anything to them.
Yeah, it.
Yeah. Keeping, even I think Trump was wrong on wanting to fully get out of there. In terms of, we could have kept Bagram with 3 to 5,000 troops over there, relatively small. What do we have in Germany right now?
Right.
75 years after the war.
Yeah,
And in other places, I don't know, about 100 different places that we have troops or of some sort around the world, and and that's right there close to Russia and China, who are the
Mm-hmm.
big
yes,
looming powers right now. And
yeah,
we could have kept the Taliban at bay, just with aerial reconnaissance and
Mm-hmm.
the occasional pushing them back with an airstrike, and we would have had to prop up Afghanistan, whatever we want to call it, but we would have had a presence there that was really strategic, and the, better to fight them over there than here, of course,
Right.
yeah,
and um and keep an eye on our new enemies, the old USSR and China, which is now like, they're looking at us not only as uh, Islamic terrorism looking at us, but China's got to be looking at us going, if we're ever going to move on Taiwan, it's got to be within the next 3 years,
Right.
because
yeah.
I
um,
think you're
We
right.
have been we have been weakened in so many ways financially. We're weakened now. Our dollar isn't. We've got rampant inflation under this new administration. We've got our economy's weakened, and it was starting to recover, but now that's we've got a shortage of employees. We got people sitting at home not doing anything, and there's plenty of jobs out there. But you
Right.
know, all of this, so we're financially weakened. We've been weakened. Our industries are weakened because we don't have employees. You know, and that's from again from China, from the Wuhan virus.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got that. Plus we've lost a lot of people have died from this, and we got more variants that just keep popping up.
Mm-hmm.
And
So they tell us
uh,
anyway.
Yeah.
yeah, well, uh, I
We
know
could talk
from
about that tomorrow on.
Right.
We gotta save something for tomorrow, guys.
Right.
So,
oh, we are
um,
still doing a show tomorrow too. Okay,
oh yeah, this is
okay.
just a
9/11
special
one. Yeah, okay.
edition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we are like so weak right now financially, and that's what they were going for is the financial
Yeah.
district down there. And we've
mhm,
weakened ourselves. We're spending money that we couldn't dream of paying off right now. And and it's almost like the people in charge now, the ones who were pulling the strings on Biden, whether it's all the Obama people and what's left of Nancy Pelosi, even though she's starting to lose it too. Um,
yeah,
it's almost like they want to see in their own way America brought down too. They don't want us to be the world power, and we could be if we just get running on all 8 cylinders again. But the way we're going about this with constant shutdowns and constant this paying people to sit home, now these mandates for
yeah.
the shot that a lot of people don't want to get, and it's supposed to
Wait
be
for
your choice.
tomorrow.
Now they're going to force it down people's throat, and you know it's everything they could possibly do that's bad for our economy is happening domestically,
Mm-hmm.
as well as from abroad. It's
Yeah.
I don't know
I,
where this goes.
Yep. It
this thing with 9/11 and stuff. We had 6 months, a year at the most, in which while they were still doing the recoveries and stuff, we had unity in this country. But then
mhm,
we went back to our bad habits, and it and in a lot of ways, it as you said, part of this was to take out part of our financial district. World Trade Center affected
mhm,
businesses around the
yep.
world, and it
Mm-hmm.
was all right here. It all it's based here,
Mm-hmm.
and we are not we are less safe now than we were on September 10th, 2001 by a long
Right.
shot. We're less safe now than we were on September 12th, 2001.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I remember, and I just, it was so eerie, and trying to get back to the 9/11 situation. We'll save the other politics for tomorrow's show, but uh, I remember going outside and not hearing the jets fly over. Now,
Yep.
we don't
I
live
was
in
just going to say that.
a high traffic area, but we got Tulsa, and then you got Fort Smith, you got
Yep.
Arkansas on one side, and they kind of, they occasionally pass through, but seemed, and I don't remember how long they were grounded, but it seemed like forever. And the first time after that I saw a jet flying over, I was like, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
we're coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I look at things like, I watch wrestling occasionally. I don't watch it like I did, but I do watch it. And one of the things was on 9/11, the WWE had one of their shows, and there was so much patriotism and so much, we're going to do this to show that we are not going to
Yeah.
bend to your will. We are not going to give in.
Mm-hmm.
This year alone, somebody, one of the wrestlers said something that I don't know, somebody in Istanbul or China I don't know where it was at, but they said something that was offensive. So they came out and apologized for saying something that could be misconstrued as an insult. And it was
Mm-hmm.
just, it's it's wrestling, it's acting, you know. Yeah, those guys
Mm-hmm.
get hurt. So do stuntmen, you know. That's just
Mm-hmm.
that. They're going to get
Yep.
hurt because that's what they are. They're just glorified stuntmen.
Mm-hmm.
But sorry, wrestling fans, if you're listening to this, that's just the way it is. Get used to it.
Yeah, Kelly
But
Green.
yeah, Kelly. But you know,
Back to tennis.
yeah, exactly. What the thing was 20 years ago, they came out and they wanted to kick butt. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is what
Yep.
people were doing. We are not going to be terrorized. We're not going to let the terrorists win. You know, and they had their show. Now I look at their show and it's all,
Yeah.
you know, we
Yeah.
love you and oh happy happy joy joy. You know, like
Yeah.
get off. You know, and this crap over now, giving up our base after 20 years of fighting. You know, and I agree with you. We should have never gone into Iraq. You know, hey, as long as Iraq was there and uh, oh, what's his name?
Saddam.
Hussein.
Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein. Yeah. Anyways, that's Sodom and Gomorrah. But either way, as long as that idiot was there, he was keeping the Iranians in check. You know, maybe not doing a great job of it, but he was. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he was keeping them in check, and this was all about uh, making Daddy feel better that he didn't get to go take him out in the first place. I mean, what would we have done if we had taken out Saddam Hussein in what
Oh, back
91?
in the, yeah,
You know, yeah.
91. Yeah.
What would we have done with that? We'd have just Iran would have swept in there, and we'd have had this. We'd have had our 9/11 a hell of a lot sooner. That's what would have
That's
happened.
that's possible. That's possible.
You know.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and just, it's weird because it's uncanny. It just, happenstance. But today is like almost identical weather-wise to 2001 here. It was a beautiful day,
Same
you know.
Same here.
Yep. Same
Same
Yeah.
here.
here. Yeah.
And New York City, obviously down there, typical morning, and what was it, about 8:46, I think, the first
Yep.
plane hit.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and then it all happened. So it's almost like proper, I guess, in the way that 20 years later that we have the same weather to be reminded somehow. It is kind of weird, but
Mhm.
but anyway, where do we go from here? God knows,
Yep.
right now and with our own domestic situation related to this, hopefully we will get an adult in the White House and in Congress next year. But if you've already seen what's happened to Larry Elder in California, with attacks happening to him out on the
Mhm.
street and not even getting reported by most of the media, when
Yep.
the election season comes back again, the Antifa is going to come out of the closet again, and
Mhm.
they didn't leave, and I think we're going to have a lot of the same mayhem that we had uh, last year. It's to a
Mhm.
great extent, and especially if they feel threatened.
Oh, and
Right.
by the way, the recall election is Tuesday.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
A
okay.
friend of mine that lives in California sent me a text about what's going on there, and I replied, "Yeah, watch the media hide this." And I'm not hearing anything about what's going on
Right.
over there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
It's our country, as I said, we lost our innocence. We changed. At one point, we changed for the better. I mean, I'm not sure I could handle hearing somebody like Hillary and all those idiots up there now singing "God Bless America" and holding hands and stuff. That was hard on the ears, but it would be nice.
mm-hmm.
One thing I
Yep.
want to say about something, and God bless them all for doing this, but on today's, because I've been watching it, the replay in the background, because I obviously didn't get up in time. But when they played the national anthem, when they sang the national anthem, not one person kneeled. And there were a lot of black people in that crowd. Not one person kneeled. And they all either saluted if they were veterans or in the military, or they held their hands over their hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God for that. Thank God that politics didn't go into this, other than, well, I didn't listen to it all. I've had it on. I've just been watching it while we were doing the show. But, they, uh, uh, nobody kneeled. And I would have been so furious had I seen one person kneel.
Right.
If they knelt somewhere out of sight,
Yep.
and,
Oh,
but
and I don't know if you remember this, but the big news on September 10th was the Broncos Giants game where McCaffrey, Ed McCaffrey, broke his leg when he caught that errant pass by Brian Greasy.
Yeah.
And that was the big news. And then when they went to the next day, they went to interview John Elway. He got bumped because of what happened on that fateful day.
Yeah.
Well,
But,
unfortunately.
Oh, and by the way, tomorrow Broncos are playing the Giants.
The NFL still hasn't gotten me back. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
Even I have the Syracuse University game on in the background right now. I have tickets. I should be up there. But there's mask mandates, and I'm not going to go up there and sit like a dummy with a mask on.
They have the same thing at the Comedy Works here in Denver. I wanted to go see my friend Brad Williams last weekend. And it's either show them a proof of vaccination or a negative test 72 hours before the show. And I just said, nah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't need a $9 beer that much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we look at our country now and we think, are we changed? And I think in a lot of ways we are changed because of those events. But we were polarized before any of this happened. I mean, we just, as I said when I first came on, we were just getting over the hanging chads. That was a joke. This generation now, they don't know what the hell a hanging chad is. They have there's no reference to that. Like, oh, what's her name that is on Ken Heron's show? She co-hosts with him sometimes. Ashley, yeah. She probably has she probably doesn't know what a hanging chad is or has very little remembrance of it. And that's when we became a divided country, and so we were ripe for what happened. We were ripe for this to happen, and here we are 20 years later, and we're more divided. Instead of being united as Americans, we're divided as people.
Right.
Yeah.
And this should be a day 20 years after the fact. This should be a day we should be united. I mean, even the memorial today, everybody there, all the presidents and former presidents were all Democrats. The one or the two Republicans, Donald Trump obviously wasn't going to be there, and
George Bush.
George Bush went to the crash site in Pennsylvania, where he spoke at. Which I mean that's a good thing because that was the one thing that united us, was hearing that "Let's roll." That was the thing, that united us, and unfortunately, it's NFL BLM, not for me. And
Right.
that's it. And you're right, Mike. I think we're going to have another. I mean, I think we're all thinking. To be honest with you, I was surprised when I got up and didn't see the news streaming about those 6 planes that are sitting on the tarmac over in Afghanistan being blown up with people on board. I honestly thought that's how they'd commemorate it. You know, and
Right.
you know, I really expected the worst, and I'm glad that it didn't happen, but I expected it. But I
Well,
think for
guys,
savings,
we've done a
yeah,
little over an hour, and I want to thank you for coming on to commemorate this fateful day. Tomorrow, we will be back at our regular time. We're going to be talking about what we touched on before. We're going to talk about Biden's mask mandate, and we'll talk about how is that constitutional, which we'll talk
yeah,
about in depth tomorrow, plus other hot topics tomorrow. So thank you all for in the chat for coming, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.
Bye,
Bye
everybody.
bye.
goodbye, folks.